Hey everyone. We are so close to hitting 1,000 subscribers. Please smash that subscribe button and help our unveiled family reach our goal. Thanks to everyone who has already subscribed. We love you. Now to the video.
I matched him on a boring night where I had nothing to do and nowhere to be. He wasn't my usual type at all, but he messaged first, and he wasn't weird about it. He talked like someone who wanted to hang out without forcing anything. He sent normal pictures. Hoodies, trainers, random selfies with bad lighting. Nothing that screamed danger. Nothing that screamed don't go. He kept saying he knew a cool spot no one else went to. At first I thought he meant a lookout point or some rooftop like those people use for late-night photos. He said it was an abandoned place he found with his friends ages ago. He made it sound harmless, like a place where people used to hang out as kids. He kept calling it Cool Abandoned Place, like that was the official name. I shouldn't have been down to go, but he didn't sound like he wanted trouble. He sounded excited, almost like a little kid who discovered a secret fort. We met near a closed supermarket car park. The lights above flickered, and the air felt colder than earlier. He showed up wearing a black jacket and gray joggers, hood down, hair slightly messy like he rushed to meet me. When he saw me, he grinned in this excited way like he'd been waiting to show someone this for ages. We walked past the car park and down a small road behind some warehouses. The streetlights were spread out weirdly, leaving patches of darkness between them. He kept checking behind us like he was making sure no one followed, but he did it in a casual way, laughing it off as just being paranoid. The place he took me to was behind a chain fence. The fence had a bent corner that someone had clearly pulled open ages ago. He slipped through the gap like he'd done it 100 times. I hesitated, because stepping through a broken fence isn't exactly normal date behavior, but he held the gap open and told me it was all safe inside. The yard was filled with old crates, bits of metal, graffiti sprayed across walls. He walked quickly, not even looking at the ground, like he had every corner memorized. That made me trust him a little more. If he'd been here enough to know it by heart, then maybe it really wasn't dangerous. He led me to a big metal door on the side of the building. The windows above it were boarded up. The whole place looked dead. He pressed his hand to the door and pushed it slightly until it creaked open just enough for us to slip through. Inside, it smelled like old rain, dust, and stale wood. The air felt heavy but not rotten. More like a storage place no one touched for years. The floor was covered in scraps of broken plaster. There were long hallways, silent rooms, and echoes that came from nowhere. He pointed out a staircase on the side and said the view from the top floor was insane. He'd been hyping it up the whole time, so I followed him even though the stairs looked like they could collapse at any second. As we climbed, he talked a lot. Not deep stuff, just random stories of coming here with friends, exploring abandoned spots, taking pictures for fun. His voice bounced through the empty building. He didn't act creepy. He acted proud, like he was showing me a place that meant something to him. But something felt off. He kept glancing at his phone without unlocking it. He held it like he was waiting for something, checking for notifications that weren't coming. He walked fast, too fast, like he wanted to reach the top before someone changed their mind. And every time a pipe clicked or a loose piece of metal shifted, he flinched harder than normal. I told myself he was just jumpy because the place was old. We reached the 3rd floor, and he pushed open a door that led to a big room with broken windows. The moonlight came in just enough to make the place look eerie but beautiful. He walked to the middle of the room and stretched his arms out like he was showing me a magic trick. Then, out of nowhere, he went completely silent. I didn't understand why until I heard it. Car engines. 2 of them. Fast. Stopping right outside the building. I froze. He froze harder than me. His eyes widened like he'd been expecting something bad, but not this soon. He whispered something under his breath, something I couldn't hear, and he backed away from the window. Heavy footsteps rushed into the building. Not random footsteps. Purposeful. Coordinated. Fast. Then voices. Controlled voices calling out commands, echoing through the halls. Officers. Multiple officers. Coming up every stair. My chest tightened. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know why they were here. But he definitely did. His whole face changed. The excitement was gone. All that was left was panic. He grabbed my arm and told me we needed to hide. Not aggressive, but desperate. He pulled toward the back of the room, but before we reached the corner, officers burst through the doorway. They didn't hesitate. They didn't question. They went straight for him. One officer shouted his name. Another grabbed his wrist and twisted it behind his back. He didn't fight. He just dropped to his knees like he had zero strength left. They pinned him, cuffed him, and held him down firmly as more officers filled the room. I stood there shaking, breathing too fast, watching everything happen like I wasn't even in my own body. One officer approached me slowly and asked if I was okay. I nodded because I couldn't speak. My throat was dry, and my legs felt weak. They explained everything. This building wasn't abandoned. It had a silent alarm system built in the entrances because people kept breaking in. He triggered it the moment he forced the metal door open from the side. They had been tracking him for weeks because he had a habit of breaking into restricted places for exploring and dragging people along with him. He called it urban stuff. The officers called it trespassing, endangerment, and ignoring warnings. Tonight was just one of the many places he'd entered illegally. And he brought me into it without telling me anything. They lifted him up and walked him toward the stairs. He kept his head down. He didn't look at me once. It was like the moment they showed up, I disappeared from his world completely. As they escorted him out, one officer talked to me again. Asked if he told me anything about the building, if he mentioned alarms, if he pressured me. I said no to all of it. Because he hadn't. He played it off like it was harmless fun. Outside, more officers waited. Lights from their cars flashed against the broken walls. The whole building looked completely different now, dangerous, unstable, wrong. I walked back alone, every step feeling heavier. The night air felt colder, sharper, like the shock hadn't worn off yet. He didn't take me to show me something cool. He took me because he thought he could explore one more place before getting caught. And I walked into it without even knowing.
I wasn't even looking for anything serious. Just messaging people for fun, trying to pass time. She popped up with these bright photos of her on balconies, rooftops, edges of cliffs, weird angles that looked like something out of those risky videos people watch late at night. I thought it was just her style. I didn't think she actually did that stuff in real life. She messaged first. Fast. Confident. She skipped the whole small talk thing. She said she was bored and wanted to show me somewhere cool. I joked that it was late and everything was closed, but she said it didn't matter. She already had a spot in mind. A rooftop near the river. She sent the address like it was a normal thing to do. I should have questioned why someone's first idea for a meet was a random rooftop, but she talked about it like it was a casual vibe. She said the view was crazy and nobody ever bothered her there. She kept saying it was peaceful and empty. The type of place where you could actually hear yourself think. Something in her tone made it sound kinda appealing. The walk there was quiet. The streets weren't busy, mostly empty except for the odd car or someone walking their dog. The building she picked wasn't fancy, just one of those old blocks with faded bricks and a door that looked like it hadn't been painted since forever. She told me to message her when I was outside so she could come down and let me in. When I got there, she already stood by the door waiting, hood up, hair tucked inside, backpack on like she was traveling. She smiled when she saw me, one of those fast smiles that disappears as soon as you notice it. She didn't waste time talking. She just said we had to catch the lift before someone else came down. The lift was tiny and made that tired metal groan older buildings always have. She pressed the button for the top floor, then leaned her shoulder against the wall like she'd done this 1,000 times. She kept looking at the numbers above the door, tapping her foot like she was rushing herself more than rushing me. I tried to make small jokes, break the tension, but she only gave short laughs that didn't match her eyes. When the lift stopped, she walked out fast, checking the hallway like she expected someone hiding behind the corners. She went straight to a metal door marked staff only. No hesitation. She pulled a small card from her pocket, slid it through the gap and popped the lock in 2 seconds. The door clicked open. I stopped walking. She turned around and shrugged like it wasn't a big deal. She said it was just a storage door nobody cared about. I believed her because my brain didn't catch up to the fact that she opened it way too easily to be casual. She waved me through and climbed the stairs ahead of me, her boots echoing off the concrete walls. At the top, another door opened to the rooftop. The cold air hit us instantly, that sharp river breeze that feels cleaner than street air. The rooftop stretched far across the building, lined with metal railings and old vents. The city looked insane from up there. Lights everywhere, reflections dancing on the water, cars moving like tiny sparks. I understood why she liked it. She walked straight to the edge, fearless, holding onto the rail with one hand. She kept saying this was her favorite spot, how she came up here all the time to think or film stuff. I assumed she meant normal photos. Maybe arty videos. Not anything deep. She leaned against the railing and smiled at me, actually relaxed for the first time. Then she took out her phone and placed it on the ground facing the edge like she was setting up a shot. She didn't explain anything. She didn't ask if I wanted to be in the video. She just positioned it like she already knew what she was doing. That's when I noticed her backpack wasn't just a backpack. It was filled to the top, zipped halfway open, and inside were items that didn't belong together. A tripod, gloves, bolt cutters, a suction thing people use to climb windows, a small rope, stuff that looked like props but definitely weren't. Before I could ask, a sound cut through the air. A helicopter overhead. Circling. The lights flashed across the rooftop, and she instantly stepped back from the edge. Her whole posture changed, shoulders up, jaw tight, eyes locked on the sky like she'd been caught doing something she knew she shouldn't. I didn't understand what was happening, but she did. She grabbed her phone from the ground and stuffed it in her pocket so fast it scraped across the concrete. She told me we needed to leave. Not calm. Not playful. Urgent. She kept glancing at the stairwell door, then the rails, then back at the sky. Her whole body went into panic mode. Before either of us moved, the stairwell door burst open. Not pushed. Burst. 4 officers swarmed the rooftop, dressed in plain clothes but holding badges out. They spread out fast, blocking the door, blocking the rail, blocking every place she could run. One officer shouted her full name. She froze like someone hit a pause button. The wind blew her hair across her face, but she didn't brush it away. She just stared at them, breathing fast, shaking slightly. They moved in slowly, not yelling, but with authority like they'd been waiting for this exact moment. One of them said she'd been tracked through multiple rooftops across the city. Another said they had footage of her climbing restricted areas, breaking into locked buildings, scaling walls with equipment. They said she'd been doing risky stunts for attention and posting them anonymously online. Thousands of views, no identity shown. And tonight she picked the wrong building. She didn't argue. She didn't scream. She just lowered her head like she read the ending already. They cuffed her quietly. One officer grabbed her backpack and looked inside. The items I saw weren't props. They were exactly what someone would use to trespass on buildings you're not supposed to access. She didn't look at me once. Not even when they walked her past me. Not even when they led her to the stairwell. I stood there frozen, the wind stinging my face, the city glowing below me like nothing happened. The officers asked me a few questions. How I knew her. How long I'd been there. Whether she asked me to climb anything. Whether she pressured me. I told them everything. They nodded, told me to avoid the area for the rest of the night, and escorted me down the stairs. The whole building felt different on the way down. Cold. Okay. Wrong. When I stepped outside, more officers were waiting. A couple neighbors stood near their windows watching. A parked police car had its lights off but engine running. She sat in the back seat, head tilted down, hair covering her face. I couldn't see her expression. I don't think I wanted to. I went home slowly, replaying everything. How she acted so casual. How she moved through that building like she'd done it a million times. How easily she opened the doors. How she picked a rooftop for a first meet like it was normal. She didn't invite me for a date. She invited me to the next location in a pattern she already had going. And if the officers were even 10 minutes later, I might have been standing next to her while she filmed something illegal, dangerous, and completely insane.
I wasn't even meant to go out that day. It was one of those long, dull afternoons where you're lying on your bed scrolling without thinking and suddenly someone messages you with actual effort. He seemed normal enough on the app. A little stiff in the way he typed, but polite. He asked simple things, gave simple answers, and didn't push anything weird. That's honestly the only reason I agreed to meet him so quick. He felt harmless in that quiet, awkward way. We picked a small food place near the high street. Not fancy, not loud, just one of those spots with warm lighting and music that plays at a safe volume. I got there early and sat near the window so I could see him coming. When he finally walked up to the glass, he looked exactly like his photos, but something was off. He kept rubbing his hands together like he was cold even though the evening wasn't that bad. His eyes darted around the place before he even stepped inside. When he did come in, he scanned the room like someone checking for an exit before a fire drill. I told myself he was just nervous. First date nerves. That's what made sense at first. He sat across from me and barely made eye contact. His leg bounced constantly under the table, tapping fast like he couldn't control it. He talked in short bursts, stopping mid-sentence sometimes as if his brain kept skipping. He asked where I parked, how long I'd been waiting, if anyone spoke to me while I sat inside. Everything felt rushed. Jumping from one thing to another. I joked, in my head, not out loud, that he acted like he read a police report before he came. That's how intense his energy was. He fiddled with his napkin until it ripped. He kept glancing out the window, not staring at cars or people, just staring like he was expecting something to pull up at any second. I tried to lighten the mood, tried to ask him about normal things, but he answered in short pieces that didn't fully explain anything. He wasn't rude. Just distracted. And sweating. A lot. The weirdest part was how he checked his phone every few minutes without actually unlocking it. He'd pick it up, look at the black screen, put it down again. Like he wanted to see the reflection behind him. The food came and he barely touched his. At one point he stood up like he needed air, then sat back down immediately. His hands were shaking a little. Not enough for someone across the room to notice, but enough for me to feel something was wrong. My brain kept saying he was nervous to meet someone new, but my gut kept telling me something else was going on. When the bill came, he flinched at the sound of the folder hitting the table. Not normal flinch. Full body flinch. He kept looking around like people were watching him even though no one cared. We stepped outside to walk toward the corner, and that's when the whole night switched from awkward to terrifying. The moment we got out onto the pavement, a police car rounded the corner faster than any normal patrol car would. It stopped right in front of us. Another one pulled up behind it so quick the headlights blurred. 2 officers jumped out immediately, not running, but moving with so much purpose that I backed away without even thinking. They didn't even look at me first. They went straight to him. One officer called his full name, loud enough that people nearby turned their heads. The guy froze like someone had unplugged him. His hands slowly raised, shaking worse than before. He looked at me for half a second, and that look made my stomach twist, because it wasn't confusion. It wasn't fear. It was acceptance. Like he already knew why they were here. Before I could ask what was happening, the officers pinned him lightly against the patrol car, checking his pockets and arms. It wasn't rough, but it wasn't gentle either. People on the street slowed down. A couple inside the restaurant pressed their faces to the glass. Someone across the road pulled out their phone. The officer nearest to me asked if I knew who he was. I said we were on a date. The officer nodded with this tired expression, not blaming me, just confirming something. Then I heard the words that connected everything. They said he matched the description of someone caught spray painting threats on a house earlier that night. Not random graffiti. Full threats aimed at his ex. The officers said witnesses saw him running off when a neighbor shouted. They said the person had the same clothes, same build, same haircut, same backpack. They said the neighbor gave the exact time he left, which lined up perfectly with when he messaged me saying he was just leaving the house. I felt my stomach slide into my legs. Suddenly his shaking made sense. The sweating. The darting eyes. The constant looking over his shoulder. The weird questions about how long I'd been waiting. He wasn't nervous to meet me. He was nervous because he came straight from vandalizing someone's house with threats and probably thought he was being followed. The officers asked him where he was earlier. His voice cracked. He tried to give a story but couldn't keep it straight. He kept saying he was with a friend, then changed it to being at home, then changed it again to running late from work. The officers just kept listening, not arguing, but writing everything down. He wouldn't look at me anymore. At one point I stepped back further because I suddenly didn't want to be anywhere near him. One neighbor who happened to be walking down the street recognized him. She pointed at him, telling the officers he looked exactly like the guy she saw sprinting away from the ex's house. The officers tightened their hold immediately. They weren't waiting anymore. When they cuffed him, he didn't fight. He just lowered his head like he read the ending of his own story and gave up. They placed him in the back seat of the car, and for one brief moment, he looked at me with this hollow expression I can't even describe. Not guilt. Not anger. Just emptiness. The officers asked if he had said anything strange during the meet. I told them about the shaking. The weird eye movements. The obsession with the window. One officer nodded like everything matched exactly what they expected. Apparently his ex had filed multiple complaints already. This was the worst one yet. They told me I should head home and stay away from the area for the night while they sorted everything. I walked away slowly, still trying to process the fact that the guy I met for a normal meal had vandalized someone's house with threats minutes before sitting across from me pretending to be a shy, nervous date. When I got home, I blocked him instantly. Deleted the app. Stared at my ceiling for hours replaying every detail. I kept thinking about how he kept checking behind him. How his hands shook. How he barely ate. How his eyes kept darting to the door. He wasn't nervous about me. He was nervous about being caught. And the craziest part is how close he cut it. Minutes. Literally minutes between committing something messed up and meeting me like nothing happened.
I picked the cafe because it was bright, busy, and honestly the safest place to meet someone I didn't know. I'd had a long week and wanted something simple. Nothing dramatic. Nothing weird. Just a normal meet with someone who seemed friendly online. That was all I was aiming for. The cafe sat on a corner with huge windows and those little plants they keep forgetting to water. People came in and out every few minutes, the kind of place where nobody looks at you twice. I thought that meant nothing bad could happen. She arrived 5 minutes late, walking in with this relaxed posture like she'd been here 100 times before. Hoodie, leggings, messy bun, small bag. She looked the same as her photos but more real. More alive. She smiled the moment she spotted me, not a big smile, just a soft one that made her look calm and harmless. That was what threw me off later. How normal she seemed. She slid into the chair across from me and acted like we'd met before. Not awkward. Not shy. Just comfortable. I liked that at first. Made the whole thing feel less stiff. We ordered drinks, nothing fancy, and she spent most of the time stirring hers even when it didn't need stirring. She talked fast but not in a nervous way. More like she was thinking ahead of the conversation, always one step faster than me. The cafe was warm, loud enough to drown out private conversations but quiet enough that you could hear someone laughing across the room. Every now and then she glanced over her shoulder, but I thought she was just checking the queue or the door. I didn't give it meaning. I was too busy trying to not sound boring. She kept asking me random questions. Not personal ones. More like what phone I used, whether I traveled a lot, what I carried in my pockets, whether I lived alone or with someone. That one made me pause, but she laughed it off with some small joke that made it seem harmless. I let it go. She barely touched her drink. I remember that clearly. She held it, she stirred it, she moved it around the table a bit, but she never actually drank it. Meanwhile, mine was almost gone because the nerves made my mouth dry. I didn't even realize how uneven that looked until everything happened. Around 20 minutes into the meet, she leaned forward as if telling me something important. Her expression changed slightly, not in a creepy way, just sharper. More focused. Like she'd finally reached the part she actually wanted to get to. I didn't have time to figure out what she was trying to say. Two people walked into the cafe at the same time. They didn't look like officers. They were dressed normal, talking casually, even laughing a little. But the moment their eyes landed on her, everything shifted. Their posture straightened. Their expressions dropped. They weren't customers. They weren't here to order anything. They were here for her. I felt it before I understood it. They approached our table without hesitation. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just direct. One stood beside her chair while the other blocked the small walkway behind her. It all happened so smooth that nobody else in the cafe even reacted at first. She froze, her eyes locked on the man closest to her, and for the first time since she sat down, she looked scared. Not confused. Scared. The man near her said her name quietly, like he didn't want to cause a scene. She didn't respond. She just kept staring forward, breathing fast. Then the second officer placed a hand near her arm, not grabbing her, just ready in case she tried anything. That's when she whispered something I couldn't hear. A small, defeated sound that sank into the noise of the cafe. They told her to stand. She didn't move. It was like her whole body shut down. Then, without warning, she finally turned her head and faced me. Her expression wasn't angry. Not embarrassed. Just empty. Like she already read the ending of something and knew exactly what came next. I didn't know her well enough to understand it, but something in her eyes felt hollow in a way that didn't match how she acted earlier. The officers stepped in closer. One gently guided her up, the other kept a hand hovering near her bag. People nearby finally started to notice. Conversations died down. A few heads turned. The barista stopped mid-pour. Nobody spoke. Everyone just watched as she stood there with her hands shaking slightly. They didn't cuff her inside the cafe. They didn't want to make it loud. They just escorted her out, walking slow, keeping her between them like she was fragile but dangerous at the same time. As she passed the big windows, I saw a third officer waiting outside near an unmarked car. I stayed seated, frozen, trying to figure out how I somehow ended up in the middle of something I didn't even know existed. After they left, everyone in the cafe pretended they weren't staring at me, but they were. I could feel it from every angle. My face felt hot. My hands were cold. Someone asked if I was okay. I nodded even though my throat was dry and my chest felt tight. I didn't move for a long time. The cafe noise slowly came back, but it didn't feel normal anymore. It felt wrong. Like the air had changed. When my brain finally caught up, I stepped outside, and the unmarked car was already pulling off with her inside. An officer who stayed behind approached me. He wasn't dressed like one. Hoodie, jeans, backpack. But he showed me his badge and explained everything in a voice that sounded too calm for what he was saying. She'd been meeting people from apps for weeks. Not to date. To steal. Not small stuff. High-value items. Watches. Phones. Rings. Wallets with cards she could use. She would go to cafes, parks, apartments, anywhere people let their guard down. She distracted them, made them look the other way, checked what they carried, and found ways to slip things out without them noticing. She sold it all online through different accounts they'd been tracking. They had been following her for 4 days already. She must have noticed and tried to act normal. That explained the glances over her shoulder. The untouched drink. The rapid questions. She wasn't getting to know me. She was gathering details. Figures. Patterns. Items. Weak points. She picked me the same way she picked everyone else. Quick. Casual. Easy. The officer asked if anything was missing. I checked my pockets. Wallet still there. Phone still there. Nothing touched. He nodded and said I got lucky because they stepped in sooner than expected. I watched them drive away with her, and the only thing running through my head was how normal she looked. How normal she acted. How easy it was for her to slide into a seat and pretend she was there for coffee. She wasn't. She wasn't there for me either. She came to see what she could walk away with. And if the officers had been 5 minutes later, I probably wouldn't have noticed anything until she left and my pockets felt lighter.
I matched him on a random night when I was bored and scrolling without actually paying attention. He wasn't the type I usually go for, but he messaged fast, talked casually, and didn't make things weird. Honestly, he had that quiet tone that made him seem harmless. The type of guy who apologizes when he bumps into a table. That harmless vibe is probably the only reason I agreed to meet him as quick as I did. He suggested we go for a walk instead of sitting in some loud place. He said he liked quieter areas and didn't vibe with crowded spots. For some reason I thought that sounded nice. Peaceful. I didn't think about how random it was for someone to insist on walking at night, especially with someone they had never met. I just put on my jacket, grabbed my bag, and headed out like it was nothing. He waited for me outside a small corner shop near the station. Hoodie on, hands in pockets, staring at the ground like he was counting tiles. When he looked up, he gave me this tiny smile like we already knew each other. Not excited. Not awkward. Just calm. Too calm. We started walking toward this neighborhood behind the station. The houses looked old and close together, with little fences and tiny front gardens. The kind of area where everything is quiet by 9 and you can hear someone closing a window from across the street. He kept choosing the smaller roads instead of the main path. He kept saying he didn't want to walk where all the cars passed. I didn't argue because it didn't seem like a big deal, but the deeper we went into those streets, the more I realized how empty everything was. No cars. No people. Just us and the sound of our shoes on the pavement. He talked the whole time, but none of it felt like real conversation. He didn't ask about me. He didn't talk about himself either. It was just random topics. Stuff about lights being too bright on main roads. Stuff about how he liked walking because it helped him think. Stuff about how people don't understand quiet places anymore. None of it was creepy by itself, but the way he said it felt off. Like he wasn't talking to me, he was talking to the air. At one point, he slowed down near a tall hedge and stared through the gaps like something was inside. I told him we could keep walking, but he stayed still for a few seconds before stepping back and acting like nothing happened. That moment stuck with me because it didn't fit the vibe he was trying to give off. It was like he forgot I was there. We passed a house with a dim porch light and he stopped again. This time he leaned slightly toward the gate like he was checking something. I asked if he was all right. He nodded quickly, way too quickly, then started walking again as if he didn't want to be questioned. That's when I started to feel uneasy. Not scared, just off. Like the whole walk wasn't actually about getting to know me. It felt like he was checking the street for something else. Looking at houses like he recognized them. Slowing down at corners where nobody was around. Glancing back more often than someone should. We were about 2 blocks deep into the neighborhood when everything snapped into place at once. A police car turned the corner so fast the headlights blinded both of us. The tires screeched. The car stopped right beside us like they had been tracking us the whole time. Before I could move, another car pulled up behind it, boxing us in even though we weren't even on the road. The doors flew open. Officers got out quickly, not yelling but using those sharp commands that make your brain freeze. One of them pointed at him straight away. They didn't look confused. They didn't ask who he was. They already knew. They grabbed his arms before he could even look at me properly. He didn't resist. He just dropped his shoulders and stared down, almost like he expected this to happen. One officer kept repeating something about reported sightings. Something about him matching descriptions. Something about residents calling earlier because someone was spotted lurking in their gardens. Lurking. That word hit me like a punch. The officer talking to me asked how long I'd been with him. How I knew him. Whether he'd walked ahead of me at any point. Whether he tried to go near any houses. whether he led me into the neighborhood on purpose. I couldn't even answer properly because everything happened so fast I barely understood what they were saying. While they cuffed him, I heard one of the officers explaining that multiple people had reported seeing a man wandering around their front yards earlier. Some saw him near windows. Some thought he was checking doors. They'd been circling the area for over an hour trying to find him. And here I was walking right beside him like I knew him. He didn't speak once the whole time they arrested him. Not a single word. He just kept his head down and breathed slowly, like he wasn't even bothered. The officers didn't treat him rough, they didn't push him around, they just acted like they had finally caught someone they'd been looking for all night. As they put him in the back of the car, one of them asked if he approached me first or if I approached him. I explained we matched on an app and he wanted to go for a walk. The officer gave me this long look, not judging, just trying to understand why someone would insist on walking through that area at night with someone they just met. I didn't have an answer. They checked my ID, asked if I needed a lift back, and told me to avoid walking alone in that neighborhood for the rest of the night. The officer said they'd had reports like this before, just never caught the guy in time. The whole walk back felt wrong. The streets looked the same, but everything felt different. Every porch light, every shadow, every quiet garden suddenly felt like part of something I almost got pulled into without even realizing. When I got home, I sat on my bed staring at the floor, replaying every moment in my mind. The way he stopped near hedges. The way he looked into gardens. The way he walked like he already knew the layout of all those houses. He wasn't trying to get to know me. He was waiting to go back to whatever he started before I arrived. And I just ended up being the one walking beside him when the police finally tracked him down.
I matched her on Bumble on a random Tuesday night when everything in my life felt dry and boring. I wasn't planning anything. I wasn't expecting anything. I just swiped through out of habit after a long day. She matched instantly, which already surprised me because she looked like the type who'd get 50 messages before she even logged in. Her pictures looked normal enough. Not filtered like crazy. Not posing with some weird animal or showing off stuff no one cares about. Just simple photos. Hoodie, jeans, messy hair in one of them. A mirror selfie in another. She didn't look like someone who'd bring trouble. That's the part that sticks with me the most now. We started talking and the conversation just flowed. Not in a deep way, not in a cringe way, just smooth enough that I didn't feel awkward replying. She was the one who kept the chat going too. Asking where I lived, what I liked doing, what area I was in that night. At the time, it felt like she just wanted to meet instead of texting forever. Looking back, the amount of questions she asked makes my skin crawl. She said she was near my area and asked if she could swing by for a bit. Not to stay long, not to chill, just to talk in person because she hated dragging conversations out on apps. I wasn't thinking of anything weird. I actually thought it was kind of cool that someone took initiative like that. Most people want to do 10 phone calls before they show up anywhere. My building wasn't fancy, but it wasn't rough either. Just a standard block with a buzzer that barely worked and a hallway that always smelled like someone cooking late. I tidied my room a bit, cleared the table, and checked myself in the mirror once even though I didn't plan a whole date vibe. I told myself it was just a quick meet, nothing serious. That made me feel more relaxed. She told me she was 5 minutes away. Then 2. Then outside. Her text came fast, like she didn't want to give me time to change my mind. I went downstairs to get her because the buzzer only works if you punch it hard. She stood there wearing a black puffer jacket, hood up, hands shoved in her pockets. She looked shorter than her pictures, but her face matched perfectly. She didn't smile much, just a small nod like she already knew me. That should have been the first clue, but I ignored it. We walked upstairs together and she kept glancing over her shoulder, which I thought was just her being careful at night. The stairwell lights flickered as usual, the old kind that hum when they're dying. We reached my door and she stepped in first when I opened it. And that's when everything flipped so fast that my brain couldn't catch up. The door behind me slammed open so hard it bounced off the wall. A swarm of officers rushed inside. Not like a TV show where they scream commands and kick everything over. This was cleaner. Faster. Like they already knew exactly where to go. One grabbed my arm and pulled me aside. Another tackled her before she could move an inch. She hit the floor before she even understood what was happening. I didn't know whether to yell or freeze, so I just stood there with my heart punching my ribs. They kept calling her by a full name I'd never heard in my life. She didn't even try to deny it. She just kept breathing fast, her eyes darting around my room like she was trying to find an exit. They pulled her hands behind her back and cuffed her while I stood in the corner feeling like I'd stepped into someone else's nightmare. One officer kept saying she matched the signal they'd been tracking all day. Another said they'd been following her across 3 different flats. They repeated something about forced entries and stolen stuff. They kept saying she used dating apps to pick targets because it was easier to get inside without breaking anything. My stomach dropped. Art. They weren't here for me. They were here for her. She wasn't coming over to hang out. She was coming over to rob me. Or worse. I didn't even want to think about what she planned once she got inside. The way she scanned my hallway suddenly made sense. The way she walked in first suddenly made sense. The way she kept her hands in her pockets suddenly made sense. While they lifted her off the floor, something fell out of her jacket. It hit the carpet with a soft click. A small metal tool. Not a knife, not something scary looking, just small enough to open locks without leaving marks. The officer closest to it picked it up with a gloved hand and dropped it into an evidence bag like it was nothing new. My hands were shaking so bad I had to hold onto the wall just to stay upright. They asked me a bunch of questions right there in my own hallway. How long I'd spoken to her. What she said to me. How she acted when she arrived. Whether she tried to touch anything. Whether she asked me to leave the room at any point. Whether she pressured me into anything. Whether she checked my windows. Whether she looked around too much. Every single thing they asked made the whole situation feel worse. Apparently she'd been doing this for months. Using different apps, making quick matches, gathering details to figure out which flats she could get into without causing noise. Some people opened the door halfway and she pushed in. Some let her inside willingly because they thought she was normal. Some got robbed hours after letting her in. Some read nothing until later. My phone still had her messages open on the screen, every single one of them looking innocent even though they weren't. They led her out of my flat while she kept her head down. She didn't look at me once. She didn't apologize. She didn't beg. She didn't say anything. Just kept her shoulders tight and her hood half fallen off her head as they marched her down the stairs. When they finally left, the hallway felt too quiet. My living room felt too bright. My whole flat felt wrong, like it wasn't mine anymore. I couldn't stop thinking about how easily she got inside. How quickly I trusted her. How she walked in like she owned the place. How the police were clearly expecting her to be dangerous enough to kick down my door without warning. I kept checking the door lock even though nothing was broken. I kept checking the windows even though I never opened them that night. My whole body felt wired, like I was waiting for something else to happen. I didn't sleep until the sun came up. The next morning I deleted Bumble, blocked the number she gave me, and replayed every moment of the night in my mind again and again. I didn't know how close I was to being part of whatever pattern she had going, and I'm not sure I even want to know. She walked into my flat like she had done it 100 times before. Now I understand why.
I wasn't even planning to go out that night. I'd been sat in my room for hours just scrolling through random stuff, feeling bored in that weird way where you're not tired but you're not alive either. Then this guy from Hinge messaged me saying he was already out at a bar near the canal and that I should come join for a bit. It wasn't the usual vibe where someone pressures you or tries to act too smooth. He just said it in a chill way. I don't know why, but it made me feel like maybe the night wouldn't be as dead as the rest of my week. The bar he picked wasn't fancy. It had dim lights, old wooden walls, and the type of music that only sounds good when you've had a couple drinks. I remember the smell of fried food in the air. I remember the sticky floors near the entrance. I remember thinking I should have worn different shoes. That's how normal everything felt at first. Nothing about the start of the night hinted at anything weird. When I walked in, he was already sitting at a booth near the back. Hoodie, clean haircut, calm expression. He gave me this small wave like he didn't want to make a scene. That actually made me relax, because the last few guys I met acted like I owed them a whole performance the moment I arrived. He didn't. He just looked relieved that I showed up at all. We started talking and it was normal. Not insanely good, not boring, just normal in a way that felt all right. He asked regular questions, laughed at random comments, and didn't stare at his phone every 2 minutes. That alone already put him ahead of half the dates I'd been on. The drinks came fast because the bar wasn't that full yet. I remember the way the glasses were fogged from being chilled. I remember the small bowl of crisps the waitress dropped off like she knew we'd need something to break the awkward gaps. I remember thinking this could actually turn into a decent night. He didn't make any weird moves. He didn't try to sit too close. He didn't try to grab my hand. The whole time, he kept this relaxed posture like he was used to being out and didn't need to impress anyone. I actually started to feel comfortable enough that when I needed to go toilet, I didn't overthink leaving the drink on the table. That's how calm I felt. I grabbed my bag just out of habit, not because I thought he'd touch anything. The toilets in that bar were down a narrow hallway near the kitchen, and the lights flickered a bit because they were old. I remember the mirror being cracked in the corner and thinking it made the place look like the backrooms of a club rather than a bar. I washed my hands, fixed my hair a bit, and checked my phone. No weird messages. No missed calls. Just him sending a photo of some drink he suggested I try next. All normal. I didn't know that walking back would feel like stepping into a different world. The moment I came around the corner into the main area, the music was still playing, but the whole room felt tense. People at nearby tables were looking toward our booth. A couple stood near the exit whispering. The bartender kept glancing over while pretending to polish glasses. And then I saw it. 2 police officers were standing at our booth, leaning slightly forward like they were questioning him. Not aggressive. Not shouting. Just firm. He was sitting exactly where I left him, except his whole body looked different. Stiff. Shoulders tight. Eyes locked on the table like he didn't want to move. My heart dropped so hard I could hear it in my ears. At first I thought maybe someone outside matched his outfit and the officers were checking everyone as a precaution. That was the only thing that made sense in my head. But then I noticed the way the officer nearest to him kept one hand near his belt, like he was ready for something. I didn't walk in loudly. I didn't say anything. I just stood there at the edge of the room trying to understand what I was looking at. One of the officers clocked me immediately, though. His eyes flicked from me to the booth, then back to me like he was trying to connect dots. I stepped closer slowly. Not because anyone told me to, but because standing still made me feel more uneasy. When I got near enough to hear them, the words hit me in a way that made my stomach twist. They said he matched the description of someone who had been going around the area tampering with drinks. Not stealing. Not breaking stuff. Tampering. The kind of thing that makes every girl freeze. The officers explained they got a call from another bar just 10 minutes earlier. A staff member saw a guy messing with a woman's drink when she turned around. They caught him on camera just enough to identify his jacket, his hair, his height, and the general shape of his face. He ran before they could grab him. And the description was close enough to him that they had to stop and check. The whole room was quiet now. I could feel people staring from every direction. He didn't even look at me. He just kept his eyes on the table, breathing slow and tense. One officer asked him to stand. He hesitated. A long, uncomfortable pause stretched across the booth. It was so quiet I could hear the air conditioner rattling overhead. Then he finally stood up. They moved him out from the booth and guided him toward the front. I followed behind them without thinking. Not because I was involved. More because my body just didn't know what else to do. I didn't understand how I went from having a calm night to watching the person I was talking to being walked out under police lights. Outside, the officers kept asking him the same things. Where he had been earlier. Why he left another bar so fast. Why he kept checking over his shoulder when they approached. Why his hand trembled when they asked him to stand. He didn't give clear answers. He spoke slowly, mumbling. He avoided eye contact with everyone around him. The crowd outside grew bigger. Some people smoking. Some recording. Some whispering like they knew something I didn't. I kept thinking about the drink he ordered for me. The one waiting at the table. The one I left untouched. My hands went cold. The officers said they needed to take him in for questioning because he matched enough details that they couldn't ignore it. They weren't aggressive with him. They weren't treating him like someone guilty. But they weren't letting him walk away either. When they put him in the back of the car, he finally looked at me for one split second. His expression wasn't angry or scared. It was empty. Like he already knew the night wasn't going to end the way he hoped. The car pulled off. People slowly started going back inside. The bar manager came out and told me he was sorry I had to walk into that. He said the officers reacted fast because the other bar was only a few streets away. He said they'd been watching out for the guy since the call came through. I went back inside only to grab my jacket. The drinks were still on the table. Mine untouched. His half finished. The fog on the glass had melted. The crisps were stale. The whole booth felt dead. I walked out without saying anything to anyone. I didn't block him on the app. I didn't message. I just deleted the whole account. I spent the whole ride home thinking about how leaving for the toilet probably saved me from becoming another part of whatever story was unfolding that night.
I always thought picking someone up for a first meet was normal, but I guess most people my age stopped doing that after the whole world moved everything through apps. So when this girl I matched with on Tinder kept pushing to be the one to pick me up, I didn't think too deeply about it. She kept saying she knew a nicer place than anything near my area and that driving would make it easier. I didn't see a reason to argue. I'd had a long week and honestly I just wanted to get out of my room and feel like a normal person for a bit. The intro to all this wasn't anything special. It was the part right before she arrived that messed with me. You know that weird moment when you're just scrolling, waiting, and your brain keeps making up random thoughts that don't matter until suddenly one of them does? That happened. I kept thinking about how she didn't actually tell me anything about the place she wanted to take me. Not even a vibe. Just that I would like it. Normally that would feel playful, but the more I sat there, the more I realized she planned everything and I barely knew her. She pulled up outside my block exactly when she said she would. Small blue car, nothing fancy. She leaned over and waved like we already hung out before. That made me relax a bit. If someone wanted to do something weird, they wouldn't greet me like that. That's what I told myself anyway. I got in, the heater blasting way too high, but I didn't want to reach for anything because it felt rude touching someone's stuff in the first minute of meeting them. The first part of the drive was just random chat. Not deep stuff. She talked faster than I expected, like her mind was always jumping to something else. She kept checking the mirrors even though the road behind us was empty. But again, I just told myself she was nervous. People act weird when they're trying to not mess up a first meet. About 15 minutes in, I noticed she kept slowing down, then speeding up, then slowing again. I asked her if everything was all right, not using actual speech, more just a mumble that sounded casual. She said she just didn't want to miss the turn. We were on a straight road with nothing but shops, so that didn't make sense, but whatever. I wasn't trying to ruin the mood. Then she gripped the wheel harder. Not like she was scared of crashing, but like she was preparing for something. I kept looking at her hands because they weren't steady. My stomach started to feel tight, the way it does when you're watching something that you know is about to go wrong but don't know how to stop it. And then everything hit at once. Blue lights flashed behind us. She didn't even react at first. Like she didn't hear the sirens or didn't want to accept that they were for us. But the lights got closer and she finally pulled over. The whole road suddenly felt too quiet. I couldn't hear anything except the heater blasting and a weird tapping sound from her knee bouncing up and down. She whispered something under her breath, but I couldn't catch it. She kept looking at the mirrors again, except this time she wasn't checking the road. She was checking how close the officers were getting. When one of them got out of the car, his torch immediately hit the plates. He didn't even look at us first. He just looked straight at the numbers like he was confirming something. Another patrol car pulled up right in front of us. The second one boxed us in so fast I didn't even process it properly. The officer behind us started talking into his radio and stepped closer. Everything felt like it moved a step ahead of me. Like I wasn't even in my own body. I just kept staring at the blue lights bouncing off the dashboard and thinking how stupid I was for letting a stranger drive. The officer knocked on her window. She didn't roll it down at first. Her hands shook too much to find the button. It wasn't normal nervous. It was like she already knew what they were going to say. When she finally opened the window, the officer asked her for something, but I didn't hear the words properly. My head was buzzing too loud. She kept saying she didn't know. She kept repeating it with her head tipped forward. The officer stared at her for a long moment, then asked me for ID. When I handed it over, he looked at it, looked at her, then stepped back and spoke into the radio again. I watched the other patrol car reposition like they were preparing for something bigger. Then the officer came back with a completely different tone. He said the plates matched a car involved in a hit and run earlier that day. He said someone matching her hair and jacket was seen near it. He said they didn't know if the driver was still inside or if she was part of something else. I sat there frozen, staring at her, waiting for her to say something that made sense. She didn't. She kept staring straight at the wheel like she was trying to find a gap between the threads. The officer told her to step out. She didn't move. Another officer came to the other side and opened my door. He didn't yank me out or anything. He just told me to get out slowly, and the way he said it made me realize they thought I might be mixed in with whatever she did. I stepped out, hands raised slightly. The road felt colder than the car. The lights made everything look unreal, almost fake. People were stopping on the pavement, staring. Cars slowed to see what was happening. It felt like I was in someone else's mess but trapped in the middle of it. She finally stepped out, still shaking, still avoiding eye contact with everyone. When they guided her towards the back of the patrol car, she suddenly said she didn't mean to. She kept saying she only took the car because it was left unlocked. That she didn't know anything about the hit and run. That she didn't think it would get this far. She didn't even look at me once. I stood there for almost half an hour while they checked everything. My name, my ID, why I was in the car, whether I knew her. I kept repeating the same thing. I matched her online. We were supposed to grab food. I didn't know anything else. They finally let me go when they finished their checks. One of them even gave me a ride back near my area because the road was blocked. The ride back felt silent in a way that dug under my skin. The officer didn't even talk. He probably thought I was stupid for getting into the car. I kept staring out the window thinking about how I climbed into a stolen vehicle and didn't even know. How I trusted someone I never met. How easily the night could have gone worse. When I got out near my block, the officer told me to delete her and move on. I didn't say anything. I just nodded and closed the door. I still think about how close I was to being dragged deeper into something I had nothing to do with. All because someone online insisted on driving.